Oh my God. Did you hear that, Mario? I said, Ivanka Trump, they're doing construction. I said, that doesn't look very big for a house. And Roseanne says that's her cabana.
Sorry, Madam Mayor has 601. 601.
Good morning, good afternoon, I'm sorry, it's 6:01. It is July 28th, and we have our special commission meeting. Shante, can you call the roll, please?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Mayor O'Happen. Vice Mayor Samaria. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Here.
Commissioner Hammelberg. Commissioner Kennedy.
I'm here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Commissioner Samaria, Vice Mayor Samaria, will you please do the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. I'd like to open up public comments. If please raise your hand on motion if you are on Zoom, if you have any public comments. Jane Anderson, Janie.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, it's a little disappointing that Bob and I are the only two residents signed on. Oh, I do see one more who just signed on. There was no announcement, no blast email, nothing on Nextdoor. So far, there's a grand total of 3 of us, unfortunately. Okay, a couple of things stood out to me in quickly perusing the budget. The first thing was the proposed $99,436 salary for the Public Works Manager. That does seem excessive in a village our size with 3 people that he manages. And in addition to that, there's a $3,600 car allowance and a $572 phone allowance. Now, where could he be driving that he couldn't use the Public Works vehicle, or on the occasion that wasn't possible, be paid mileage per mile versus a flat $3,600? And 572 compares to the recreation manager gets 480. Why the discrepancy? I would think at the manager level, some things should be fairly even. And of course, the recreation manager doesn't get a car allowance. Now, in that very same budget, there's a $16,000 landscaping deduction. I understand there are some projects that are completed, but I think one of the things we all pretty much agree on in this village, our landscaping has a long way to go. Why would we ever cut versus channeling those monies into new areas? I know this is going to sound really nickel and diming, but sometimes if you take care of the nickels and dimes, it gives you the dollars. Looking at the city cell phones, the commission city cell phone comes to about $37 a month. The others in police and for the manager are a little over $46. Why aren't we negotiating one lower rate? Communication, $20,000. I don't think I'm alone in saying we don't know what we're getting for that. I mean, 2 brochures and a couple of templates that you could have gotten off Constant Contact, excuse me. That's an area that you really should revisit and see if there aren't better uses. Now, the liability insurance took a huge leap of 27%, up 54,177. I would really like to hear what caused that big bump, because I think there are those who think that lawsuits don't ever come back to haunt us because the insurance companies take care of it. I think it's a very real possibility that probably fed into this. So I hope as you guys go through this tonight, we'll hear some explanations. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob Anderson.
Thank you for letting me speak. I was noticing under codifications, it's $1,400 per each time. And we're only proposing $2,000 for this new budget. And is it really $1,400 each time for codification? And if it is, are you planning not to have more than one new ordinance for the whole year? Also on at recreation, National Night Out. I think it's going to be great. We've had some big celebrations previously, past years. I see it's budgeted for this time around for $2,500, but for this new budget, there's zero. Are we planning for next year not to have any kind of a celebration for National Night Out? And I concur with the cell phones. It doesn't make any sense that we don't have one plan for the city that's the same price, and then we probably can negotiate a better deal. Right now, they're all over the place, and I see the the public works manager must have a very expensive plan because he's one of the highest on the cell phones. So hopefully you guys are going to be looking at this and have one plan for all through the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? You want to go up to the lectern, please?
Good afternoon, evening. Is this on?
No.
Yes, okay. David Raymond, 11520 Northeast 9th Avenue. Thank you for holding the workshop. And Mario, thank you for the presentation that was posted online. It flows nicely. It makes sense. A couple of questions, and I'll start with something that could be show and tell, if you like. These are doggy poop bags. Great thing to start with, right? The reason I'm bringing this up, we just were on vacation in Mount Dora, which is a wonderful town, by the way, if you've never been there. And they have at all of their dog stations have recyclable or I'm sorry, compostable bags. These all will break down compared to the ones we use here. I never thought about it. And as someone who uses, not me, my dog uses 2 of these a day. So that's figure 700 dog bags from one dog a day that go into our waste around here. So I don't know if that's something that maybe the village could look at through the ecology board or something. Just consideration. I know there's at least 100 dogs in the village, if not more, that walk. So figure that 70,000 bags a year just from here. Anyway, one little point. So on the budget itself, I didn't see anything that talked about the drainage in terms of cleaning the drains. There's 15,000 for storm prep. I'm not sure if that's the same thing as cleaning the drains. The presentation, I think, says 10. The line item budget, I believe, says 15, and they both say storm prep. So my big question is, will the village be budgeting to clean all of the village drains at least once, if not twice a year, as has been recommended and budgeted in the past? It's great. We have a bump in revenue, by the way, to use for things like that. It's wonderful. Just a couple other quick things on the roads. I didn't see anything at all on all of the road work that I know is going to happen. So I guess there's a different budget that's going to be presented for the roads than is in the regular budget. Just that I thought we had like over $1 million to do all of this road work. So maybe I'm not looking in the right place. And along those lines, the drain that was replaced in front of our home on 9th, this year when we had a big storm, did not work because there was too much rain, and the drains hadn't been cleaned. A couple of months later, a big patch of the street kind of caved in. The drain company came and fixed it. So I'm only raising this now. I don't know if we have contracts in place or what's going on with actually repairing those roads, but I know when they do them looking at a storm event that will happen every 5 years or 10 years or whatever the standard is. And it seems like we're having, if you ask Brian McNulty, these big storm events every year. So I don't know if that's something that we should, kick up on future repairs. Just throwing that out there. Last thing, there's $2,700 in the budget for weed killer. I'm not sure what weeds we're killing or why we're killing weeds. Maybe it's at the rec center field, but if we're using pesticides, it would be great if we did not use pesticides, but if we could use something that would be more environmentally conscious. I know, we take our grandkid over to the park at least once or twice a week. My kids bring him there. He plays out on the lawn. Kids are running back and forth on the field. I'm not sure where we're using that. I would only imagine there. So anyway, that's it. Thank you very much. And thank you for your work on the budget.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Are there any other comments? I know. Would you raise your hand if you have a comment? Okay. Do you want to speak? Mr. Diamante? You have to unmute yourself.
All right, I'm unmuted now. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead.
All right, we should, as the commission, as this commission is going to be ending soon in November. Yeah, I'm speaking now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. As this commission is coming to an end and there's going to be 3 vacant seats, okay, I think it's time, okay, to reanalyze and go through. You're going to let me talk? As the commission.
We're listening.
Okay.
Sir, I think you might have the live feed going, and so you're hearing the video that's being played. No one here is talking.
Okay, all right, no problem. All right, I'll say what I have to say. I think that Mario Diaz's employment contract should be reviewed after the election on November 8th, okay, and go through each line item. I think his salary and benefits are excessive. We are paying for a company car or gas allowance, insurance, cell phone. Ever since he's been hired for the last almost 24 months, okay, he is costing the village of Biscayne Park more money, not less, okay? We engaged in this public relations firm, paying them $2,500 a month up until this December, okay, to send out, I think I got it written down, 8 emails. 8 emails is worth $25,000. A girl coming out of high school or the clerk can send out the same emails. His employment contract needs to be reviewed, okay, by whether it's these commissioners that are seated now or the new commissioners that are going to be seated, depending on who's going to win. Hopefully, I'm going to win and become a commissioner, okay, and I need to review that contract. We don't need to pay almost $200,000 a year. This is like running a public supermarket. That's it. The revenue that a public supermarket makes, which is the busiest public supermarket in Dade County, by the way, on Northeast 6th Avenue, is equivalent to running the village of Biscayne Park. And that manager at Publix only gets $110,000 a year. Why are we paying this manager so much money? And he's doing less and less and less every month. And the suggestions that he puts up, that he brainwashes the other commissioners is nuts. I mean, he doesn't belong in a small.
Thank
He
you.
doesn't.
Thank you. Finish your thought. You have
Okay.
finished your 3 minutes.
Okay. I think that his employment contract should be reviewed, reduced, or terminated.
Thank you.
That's what has to happen. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from Zoom or from here? Okay. We'll close public comments. Does any of the commissioners or manager have any answers for any of these people? Mario?
I believe I'll address all the questions during the presentation.
I'm sorry?
I'll address the questions during the presentation.
Oh, okay. Okay, anybody, any other commissioners want to talk? Okay, we will move on to the resolution 2022-37, revising the date for the second budget hearing. A resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, amending Resolution 2022-33, revising the date for the second budget hearing, directing the village clerk and the finance manager to file said resolution with the property appraiser and tax collector of Miami-Dade County, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. I'd like to have a motion for that.
I'd like to make a motion
Vice Mayor.
to approve,
Maria,
to
the
approve.
motion, is there a second?
I'll second that, Jenny.
Commissioner Kennedy seconded it. Any discussion on from the commission?
I think we had this discussion at the last one, so I don't think we really need to have any more discussion on it because this is the same thing that we voted on the last time.
Any other discussion?
It's a date change. It's not the same.
I know, but it's the same resolution. It's just a date. So I don't think we really need to have a discussion on it. Thank you.
Anybody else have a comment? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passed. Motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, Commissioner Kennedy made a motion, Vice Mayor Samaria seconded it. All in favor of the adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passed. Thank you. That part of the meeting is over. Okay, this is.
Madam Mayor, if I can, Madam Mayor, if I can introduce and do the presentation with regards to the staff recommendation for the fiscal year 2022, 2023 proposed budget.
Okay. Shante, can you please call the roll?
Mayor O'Happen,
Here.
Vice Mayor Samaria.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez. Commissioner Hammelberg is absent. Commissioner Kennedy.
I'm here.
Mayor, we have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll turn the meeting over to our manager, Mario Diaz.
Thank you very much. So similar to last year, we looked through the budget and we put together a PowerPoint that tried to give a little bit of an explanation of where the money is collected, where it goes, and then what are some of the key differences within the budget. And so I'll work that through. And for everybody who's watching on Zoom, I am sharing the presentation so they're able to see it. We have it up on the television screen behind us as well. And I believe everybody has a printout or is viewing online. So where do the tax dollars go? So not all of the tax dollars that a property owner pays on their property comes to Biscayne Park. It actually goes into 4 different buckets. Miami-Dade County, for every $100 in taxes that a property owner pays, $31.29 are going to the county as of right now. The Miami School Board is $27.84. Biscayne Park for this fiscal year would be $37.73. And then regional taxes, $3.14. The regional taxes are like various other organizations and things that the county or the state has put in where they collect it through the property taxes. So how do we calculate the tax dollars for Biscayne Park? So a millage rate, and you will hear that throughout the presentation and these type of conversations, is a tax rate used to calculate the local property taxes. And it's basically an amount that's calculated per $1,000 of the property's taxable value. So here you see the formula that's essentially used for taxable value. In the example, we're using 100,000 because it's just easier to show. So a property that's worth 100,000, you would divide it by 1,000, multiply it by 9.5. So for every $1,000, you're paying essentially $950. I'm sorry. For every $100,000, you would be paying $950. So currently, the average homesteaded taxable value of the village has increased from one year to the next. In fiscal year 22, the average homesteaded taxable value was $208,167. With the current millage rate at 9.5, you would pay essentially $1,977.59 towards Biscayne Park. In fiscal year 23, the average homesteaded value is $231,676. We are proposing in this budget proposal a 9.5 millage, so we're keeping it flat. However, because the value of the property goes up, the amount of the tax for Biscayne Park goes up as well. So it's a $223.34 difference. So it's $2,220.92. Now, to give you an idea, what would happen if we go to a 9.6? Essentially, we would add $23 onto the 223 variance. So you would pay in the year $2,223.92. If you go up and to the 9.7, you add another 23. So it'd be $2,243 and some change. Correct. Essentially $23 for 0.1 mil. In 2022, the certified taxable value that is given to us by Miami-Dade County is over 14%, 14.66 over the 2021 taxable value. We're looking at the taxes that will be derived between January and December of 2022. You'll see in the chart that since 2018, we have had a steady increase in property value as of right now. Right now, the county is estimating that the taxable value, which we won't get final confirmation, certified, audited number until June of 2023, but they're estimating it at $309,707,689. So essentially what this means is that we're receiving, if we keep it at a 9.5 millage rate, our revenue goes up $357,327 in the year, which is great. If it were a 9.6, so each 0.1 millage equates to $29,422 as an increase. If you go up to 9.6, that total, instead of the $2,795, we would add 29,000 to that number. The rollback rate to get the revenue all the way to generate the tax, to generate the same amount of property tax revenues as it was the prior year, we would have to roll it all the way back to 8.29 to be able to see a $0 change in revenue. Major differences, and I'm sorry, I did not introduce him, but Paul Winklejohn is also on Zoom with us. So if we have any questions that I might not be able to answer, he's available as well. So major budget highlights: state shared revenue We're expecting the state projections to increase. However, we haven't been given those final numbers yet. So once we do, hopefully in August, we'll be able to plug in those additional revenues into the budget. As we mentioned and are having a conversation again in August, franchise fees may not be imposed to offset the increase of the contract. So that's already being reflected within the budget. We've eliminated administrative fee transfers from the general fund or into the general fund from road funds, building fund, and the CITT funds for various reasons, and we'll go into those. State communications tax, again, we don't have the final number from the state. They haven't posted those yet. So as soon as we do, hopefully for the August workshop, we'll be able to include that. If not, we should have those numbers for the September hearings. Overall, the revenues, property taxes provide 75.44% of total revenues that we receive. State and local shared revenue is about 10.1. Utility tax and various other franchise fees like electricity, communications, and so forth present 11.2%. Recreation fees is less than 1%. Fines and forfeitures 1.1%. And various others are 1% or less. So with that, how do we use the tax revenue that you all provide the village? So for every $100, the police department will $41.06 goes towards the police department, $28.66 goes to general administration, $16.13 goes into public works, $7.92 goes into park and recreation, $4.51 goes into the code, 56 cents goes into commission, and then transferring from the general fund into other departments would be $1.16. From a percentage basis, personnel accounts for, and the various benefits and everything that goes into it accounts for 59.11% of the total expenditures that the village has. Operating costs is at 37.02. Capital is up 2.63%. Interfund transfers, again, is 1.16, and we have less than 0.0% in contingencies. Biggest highlights for overall budget: personnel costs. So everybody within the village, we're showing a 6% cost of living adjustment and merit, except for the village manager. I don't wish to be presumptuous, and so I've left that for the commission to discuss at the review. Not that we need to settle right now, but for the end of the meeting, I would ask that maybe we hold my review at the August workshop, so that it's already a day that we have planned, as we've had multiple meetings throughout August and September already scheduled. Adding another one when we can just tack it on might be easier and it'll help us for the budgeting process. In August, you will all receive, at the August meeting, you'll all also receive a collective bargaining agreement with the police officers that they've already ratified, and it's up for the commission to ratify. It shows that their cost of living will be an 11%, which is something that we were negotiated down from over, I think it was, Paul, and you might want to correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was between 17 to 20%, their original ask, and we negotiated down to about 11% total. Health insurance has increased by 34% year over year. We did add some extra percentage in this cost simply because we've already noticed from one year to the next, there was a big increase. And so we don't want to be short next June, or I'm sorry, May, when we have to renew the medical benefits. One of the things that I will be doing this upcoming year is asking for a 6-month contract with our provider so that we can then align the medical benefits with our fiscal year. Because every year it's an accounting thing, but every year it's in the middle of the fiscal year as opposed to running with it. So in the audits, they will even show, hey, you're short within the for medical expenses, but you make up for it with the new budget just because it's off. So we'd ask for 6 months, get it to end in September, renew in October again. So then it will run from October to September. FRS employer contribution ranges depending on the classification for the employee from 11 to 31.5%. This is a state mandated and they impose what those rates are for each classification. This is not a village. We don't have the luxury to determine what those rates are. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into essentially each department and we'll talk about the various different highlights that we have there. If anybody has a question from the commission with regards to something within this department, feel free to ask. If the commission wishes to do that, or if the commission wishes just to wait until the very end, I'm completely fine either way. The first biggest.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I ask you make a couple of points?
Sure.
Ask you a couple of questions about that part of the presentation?
Sure, not a problem.
So I know we have all discussed this, but I think it's worth repeating for the people who will watch this later. We don't have a big crowd here tonight. But just to remind everyone, we already set a maximum millage rate of 9.7, which means
Correct.
we can't go above that. You're proposing in your budget to us this evening a millage rate of 9.5.
Correct.
The numbers that you're telling us are, if we adjust that millage rate up or down, because we can always bring it down from what you're proposing.
Correct.
Bring it down as much as we want to. You're telling us we could go as low as 8.3 to bring in the same revenue that we brought in last year. That's the rollback rate.
Correct.
Right. But for every 0.1 millage that we go up or down, that's changing our revenue $29,000 for the village. And the impact to an individual resident average is $23 annually.
No. So at a 9.5 rate annually, it's 223. And so if you go up, you would add an additional 23 to that.
Per
millage, right. So that part, it's
Up or down.
23 up or down
Up or down,
from what
$23
is-
for the average homesteaded resident,
from what's already being presented at the 9.5, correct?
which comes to $1.92 a month. So it's important for us to remember that we can't go higher than the 9.7 that we've already capped, but we can come lower than the 9.5 that you're proposing. And the impact to the village is $29,000 for each 0.1, or an average of $23 annually, $1 less than $2 per month for the average resident, correct?
Correct. For the
Beautiful. Just want to make sure.
per point mill, correct.
They're on that. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. No problem. So in administration, the biggest reduction that you'll see is 66,000 that is coming off. These were one-time projects that Calvin Giordano is working to complete as we speak. The comprehensive plan that is state mandated in August will be going in front of the planning board for their review and vote. Once they're done, it would come to the commission, as well as the water report. That's the state mandates that we do our own every X amount of years. And then the land development is what is commonly known as McMansions. So those will be completed and there's no reoccurring cost, so that comes off. The independent auditor and finance contract fees, there is an increase overall that goes into it. So that is increasing 10,000. Communications, typically ADT, Comcast, all of those is at about 5,000. Property and liability is 54,000. We have had various accidents with vehicles, especially in our police. We've had various workman comp issues with employees getting hurt, both in almost all departments while on the job. And just the status of the overall where we are in today's marketplace has gone up. inflation is the key big word, and it drives a lot of the different costs. Election, we've added an additional 6,000. We are waiting to hear the final cost estimate from the county, so that might be something that in August may go down, but we have it at 10,000 within this budget right now. And I think that's more than enough. Various Microsoft licenses and bank merchant fees, our fees have gone up. We are doing another audit on the various computer licenses that we have. So I'm anticipating that this number may go down as well. But until I have those final numbers coming in, we did not want to be short on it. Is there any questions specifically for administration that the commission had?
I have a couple of things, yeah.
Sure.
So you have not budgeted a salary increase for yourself, and we're going to do a performance evaluation for you. But I think for the sake of budgeting purposes, that 6% cost of living that you've budgeted for the rest of the staff, I know police are handled a little bit separately. I think we should put that in. So at least we have it in there for budgeting purposes. Now, it doesn't mean we're giving you a 6% salary increase, but I think we need to have it in there as an item. I don't know anyone else's opinion on that, but I feel more comfortable being conservative and budgeting for it now.
Okay.
Anyone else has an opinion there?
No, I agree.
Calvin Giordano, their work is going to be completed and paid for completely out of this fiscal. And as
Yes,
you
sir.
explained to me earlier, if there were some additional charge that came in after the fact, you could still charge it to fiscal 22.
Correct.
Would not impact this budget. Great. Well, I'll just, when we come back, I have a couple of line item things in the administration that I'll ask about. On here, I thought elections were more like 15 grand. That's the number that I remember from previous years.
Yeah, it was 15, but I think that was when we did it ourselves or something like that.
I should have looked it up. I recall seeing it in a budget of 15 grand, but you're going to get a number from the county, but I was very clear that it was 15 grand.
Right. It all depends on what outside of the candidates that are running for commission. If we had any other ballot questions or anything like that, because then it's not only, it's adding it onto the ballot, but then it's in all three languages, English, Spanish, and Creole. So it just kind of depends on how big of a ballot just for our municipality it would be. Since the commission had moved forward with not putting anything onto the ballot earlier this year, we're just looking at the commission section. So
Before we see the next version of this, you'll have a hard number in there.
we should have a hard number, yes.
That's all I have about what you have in front of us here, but we'll
Okay.
come back and talk about administration.
Sure.
But I would like I really would be more comfortable if we had your cost of living in there now.
Okay.
I don't want to
Mm,
try to figure out where to find the money later in the budget. Do it now. We can always remove it if we want to.
I agree with that, Commissioner Kennedy. I think we need to put that in there. If we're going to give the rest of the staff 6%, then we should have his in there. Like you said, we can always take it out later on, but I would like to have it in the budget.
And remember that when we budget these things, Dan, it doesn't mean Mario's going to spend the
No.
6% on every employee. It's budgeted in
No, I
there for
understand
him
that.
to use
Yes.
at his
No, I
discretion and
understand.
us to use at ours for him.
Because we're going per department, I think Commissioner Hammelberg, who's not with us, she did prepare a statement that she wanted to have read into the record. I think it might be a good time to read that into the record. Shantae, can you read that for us, please?
Dear fellow commissioners, I want to thank our manager, Mario Diaz, and our staff for all of their hard work putting together this budget for us to work with. I am happy to hear that the county is looking to give us all a break. With a 1% reduction in county taxes as proposed by Mayor Cava, it has been several years since the county has decreased rates, and they are all approximately 1/3 of our tax bill. I have no objections to a decrease in our millage rate, but we must keep in mind that we have several projects ready to start. Big projects never come in below budget or early. Therefore, I think we need to prepare to have a little extra cushion so we will not deplete our accounts. And as inflation continues, our costs for gas, supplies, and all materials are also going up. Our insurances for employee health have been going up year after year. Our vehicle insurance and property insurance are also increasing. And our agenda includes, number one, parking at the rec center. Number two, stormwater management. Number three, ADA compliance at the log cabin. This budget gives cost of living raises to everyone except for our manager, who has worked very, very hard to help us get more projects moving forward than any manager in years. I want to propose a raise for him, as he certainly deserves to get rewarded for his hard work. I do know there is much more work ahead of us, and I'd like to keep him on board for a while. At a time when crime has risen in all jurisdictions around us, our police have kept us safe. I believe that we have had 10 full-time officers since I moved here in 1996. I think we should add to the police force. If it is not feasible to hire a full-time officer, then at least we could increase hours for our part-time officers. This should give us a savings, as it would cut back on overtime. I also would like to add a line item for the Jazz Festival to ensure its continued success. I wish I could be with you for this discussion. I have reviewed this budget with the manager, but I am not able to attend today. Respectfully, Commissioner Judy Hammelberg.
Thank you very much. Moving on to police and code. The major factors that we see is repair of vehicles. We're increasing at 8,000. Initially, police wanted to have 2 or 3 vehicles, but I rejected that idea, as the older vehicles that they have are from 2013 and 2015. And I think we could still use them for at least another year or two. But just in case, if there are any motor issues or anything like that, we did increase the repairs for any vehicles. That increase in the repairs is still under what the cost would be to have multiple new vehicles. Fuel is a big increase, even though the village does not pay the market rates, what we see at the fuel pump. We have an agreement with North Miami that we use their fuel depot, their fuel warehouse, whatever we want to call it, their internal gas station. And they receive the fuel at a discounted rate, as opposed to being on Shell or Exxon or any of the gas stations. So we never paid the market rate there. However, based on the consumption this year, we already raised it 15,000, where we'll probably have to go back and take another look at that. But looking at a full year, police by itself, we would need to increase at least 34,000. Even though prices are going down, I don't foresee it going down to pre-COVID levels or anything like that. I think, in my personal view, I've always seen huge spikes in gas prices, and then when they start coming down, it's always at least $1 more than what we were paying before the spikes happened. So I think it'll settle in the 3s somewhere for a few years, and then it'll spike again, and then we'll settle in the 4, and we're like, oh, at least it's not that bad. But I remember when gas was less than $1 for a gallon. So at least it was when I started driving. Code division essentially stays flat within all their operating expenses.
Mario, you did tell me that we did have a new vehicle budgeted for the police.
We do have one new vehicle that's being requested. We're hoping to be able to get it. We would need to, so it's a Dodge Durango is what we're going to look for, or something in that kind of classification if it's available. Even if there's a window that needs to be ordered, which is within the next couple of months. And so even though we order it, we might not even get it in this fiscal year. But you do see, and I apologize for not listing that in the slide, It is 11,592. You'll see that the cost is more than what we got our recent Chevy Tahoes or Durangos for. It's just the price of cars. I don't want to do a huge influx. You'll see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 2017s coming off of the books because they were paid off, and then we do own those at the end. We would be, I'm sorry, if we can mute the any laptops so that we don't have the echo. Apologize. So we did get 4 vehicles to come off of the books, and we're requesting one. I don't want to replace the 4 vehicles and the other 3 that we have, simply because the cost right now of vehicles is so high. I'm hoping that the market might level off a little bit within the next year or 2. So I'm hoping to get as much life out of the existing vehicles as we can, so that when we do lease new ones, it won't be at such a premium price that we're seeing in the marketplace right now. Again, although these are not, we're not getting for example, the Tahoes, they're not, even though they're being sold for $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, that's not what we're getting them at. We get them at a lower cost, although there is an increase, right? So it's a balance. It's a lower cost for the overall vehicle, but there's an increase because you put a police package on it. Various things within the vehicle that police have that is not normal for the common market. Does that answer your question, sir? Yep. Okay. Commissioner Kennedy?
Does have anything to say? No? Okay, so, police and coder all together in one budget now. I think this is the second year we've done it. And by the way, Mario, I should have said this in my opening the first time I spoke. You did a really nice job on this. And I remember my first budget as a commissioner 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It was kind of like disastrous. And then you came along and you made the first time you did it, it was much better. And I see another big stride here. And this is really kind of a pleasure to go through. It's so much easier for us to look at. So,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I did make a request one time to Paul, and I can't remember what the answer was. If we could get this on an Excel, I think it doesn't live on an Excel in his system, but it sure would be nice to have this on an Excel so we could get in there and play with stuff and actually see how the numbers.
You mean the spreadsheets?
Yeah, the worksheet.
Yeah, we can send that to you.
Oh,
in
you
Excel.
can? Oh, that'd be awesome, because then we could go in there and kind of adjust things. I mean, I wouldn't adjust your budget, but I could go in there as I'm thinking about things and play with things and see how it impacts the budget.
The difficult aspect of that is that there's a lot of macro connections between various, and so by if you change an aspect that's connected to a different spreadsheet, then you're not going to actually see the number. You'll just see those pound signs because it's not interacting with each other.
The answer was, so don't bother sending it.
Okay.
I'll make a mess and then I'll.
Okay, no worries.
So police police is 41% of our budget. It's the biggest part of the budget. And it's, you want to be able to trim where you can. And it's very challenging because it's really lean in there, but I have a couple of things I want to ask you about. First of all, just to confirm, the police cost of living are all contractual, correct? The 10% you said. Code is in the same department. Is code contractual?
No.
Or they're just regular village
No,
employees?
they're non-union employees.
Got it. Is there any way that we can look at reducing, is there a way to reduce overtime in the budget? Because it's pretty significant. And it doesn't look like a lot of it gets used. Is there any way to decrease overtime by adjusting schedules or something?
We did decreased in what's being presented about $6,000, so about 17%. However, a lot of the overtime sometimes will happen when we have storms, events, things that we're not anticipating. That comes in where our officers are already working on 12-hour shifts. And so if we were to go downward, we can't go upward anymore. We're already at the max of hourlies for our officers. So if we were to go downward, it would actually create more overtime. So we're kind of at that point. We could hire more officers, but realistically, for every new officer you hire, you're talking a minimum of about $70,000 to $80,000 all in.
So is it more fiscally responsible to give more time to the existing officers than to bring another officer on? That's what you're saying.
What I'm saying is our current full-time officers and part-time, the way that the chief is running it is probably as lean as we can be. We can maybe look at, instead of a full-time officer, maybe a part-time officer, which is cheaper for us. But I don't see where they can cut hours to make it less
Trying to
overtime.
look to see different places we could trim. Another thing that jumps out at me is the travel and per diem. In fiscal 21, last fiscal year, we spent 0, and year to date, we spent nothing. But the $2,500 carries over year to year. And I think Janie Anderson said it in her remarks. These amounts of money can look so tiny. It's like, it's $1,000 here and there. But when you start trimming things all over a budget like that, it adds up to real money. And remember, we only need to hit $23,000 to make the difference of 0.1 in millage. So at that
29.
point,
29.
I'm sorry, 29. So
The,
we only need to hit $29,000 when we start slicing and dicing here to make enough of a difference that we could either consider that's $29,000 more for us to get something done, or the opportunity to decrease 0.1 in millage. So that's why I'm always looking for little amounts of money, because they add up.
Understood. The 2,500 in fiscal year 21, the chief did not intend to go to the conference that he would normally go to. And even in prior years, he paid out of his own pocket instead, which is not, if something happens to him, that it's not correct. The conference, I think, is now in either August or September. We should see that come down. I think we may have even already paid for the hotel and the travel for him to attend the conference. So that will be used.
All 2,500 will be used.
Pretty close. Yeah.
There's a contingency in here. The current fiscal year, it's $20,000, and we haven't used any. That's a good thing. But next year it's budgeted for, in your proposal, it's 28.7. Is that in part because you're using, planning to use some of these vehicles past their longer than most people would?
Partly.
Contingency is what I'm bringing.
Yeah, partly. So we hope to have addressed needing additional repairs for the vehicles and stuff like that by increasing it 15,000. But again, especially in police, which is always the question, there's always going to be certain aspects that we really do not foresee or know because of the emergency response type that they have to deal with. So we try to take out all the contingency we can from all of these individual sheets and put it into one area, which is what we did last year. And so especially for police, if you notice in the other departments, there's not really contingency in there. But especially for police, I would hesitate on removing that, simply because if something were to happen where overtime is gone because we had a major emergency and something else happens, a storm, or there's something going on, we could easily have where our officers there could be,
I understand. There could be
a county-wide event where departments are responding. They might not be in Biscayne Park, but they're county-wide events, whether it's El Portal, whether it's downtown, and all of a sudden, all that money is being used.
I understand.
So this is the area.
But it's just,
Yeah.
it's going, we don't seem to spend it. Thank God. It's a good thing we don't spend it. It's there hoping that we never do have to spend it, but yet that we're budgeting more for it. And if there were some major event, something really big happen, you could always come to us and ask us to move money from the general fund over.
But that would take 2 months. to move it from reserves and stuff will take
You
2
take a look
months.
at that,
So
and maybe, maybe there's something, because it went up pretty significantly, from 20 to 28.7 is a pretty steep jump for something we're not using. I also questioned the new vehicle and if that was really necessary. And then on slide, I'm in the police and code budget now, the
Mhm.
budget. I got a little confused on something. Slide 22, which is 64, section code 64. Are police and code mixed on this slide together? Because this is a code section. Isn't this the code department? Or
no, this is still
this is
police.
still police. Okay, I was getting confused on that. So this is all police. So the laptops are all police. Are you purchasing laptops?
Yes, we just spent, I just signed an invoice for 2,400.
You can buy 5
Um,
laptops for $2,500.
They're not big. Hoop to there for the most part is being able to do data entry in the software that they have. So they don't really, and emails and to do Zoom for their court cases and stuff like that. So it's not high powered laptops. We try to find the most budgeted. But we do have regular issues, especially because the laptops are running all the time during the shift. The cars can get very hot when they're out there, even though the AC is on. But we do have quite a bit of
I was just
turnover.
surprised to see such a low number there, actually, for 5. Okay, and then the last thing is about the code, education and training. We don't seem to ever spend that money. It's budgeted year after year. It doesn't seem to be spent, and I don't, either I hope we spend it and make things better for those employees, or we could possibly look at reducing that, because if it's not happening, why are we budgeting the money for it? And I'm beginning to feel like we're not necessarily getting what we're paying for in our code department. I know the budget's going up, I think 13% in the code department, and
No, the code department is essentially flat outside of the employee COLAs.
but if you could look at trimming some of that out, maybe we could save some money there.
Yeah, we with the education and so forth. I know our code officer just recently went and got a level 2 certification. We were down one code officer. That position was going to go to an internal candidate who ultimately did not take that, and we are interviewing. I think our last interview is on Monday, so we may need to then send them back once they start, if they start prior to the end of the fiscal year, so that they can get a minimum level 1 certification. But I'll definitely take a look to see if we reduce that overall budget as much as we can, so we can be as lean as
When
possible.
I look at your budget summary, the code does say it's up 13%. Your budget is up 13% over the current fiscal year.
We have the COLA, we have various,
Right, what I'm saying is the department is budgeted to increase 13% in expenditure.
correct, but not because of we're increasing line items outside of salary and the various benefits that come with it. Property and liability is what drives that. The salary and the benefits is what drives that. You're not seeing, and we have some operating supplies that are increasing, but outside of that,
Some of the supplies seem to be going up quite a bit.
the cost of the supplies are going up.
I know, we're experiencing that at work too. When I look at the expenditures across all the departments, the biggest increase is percentage-wise is Parks and Rec, and then it's code compliance at 13%.
Right, parks, and we can,
And I know why. I mean, we're going to get into those things. I understand, but I'm just saying, when you look at an overall picture, it's a 13% increase. It's the second biggest increase by department. So at any rate, those are my comments on police and code. I
Thank
wish
you.
There's a way to tighten it up because it's such a huge chunk of our budget. It's really slim in there.
we'll go back and take a look and see if what we can tighten up for the August meeting as well.
Okay.
Okay, so in In Public Works, the biggest changes that we're seeing is landscape expenses going down 16,000. What I ended up doing for this area, and I know it was a question that was brought, we are currently trying to finalize a plan for 10th Avenue, which will create a buffer from people making U-turns through in the median. I'm sorry, 121st Street. So to create that buffer and further protect our residents more than anything, because it's usually those going westbound and then making a U-turn onto the south side. So that is a one-time project cost, which is why we're seeing that deduction coming off the books for 10,000. And then I've combined several different locations of what is normally for planning. We had planning at this sign and this sign and that sign. I kind of just consolidated all that into one area for all type of plantings, no matter where they are in the village. And we'll be able to use that for grant purposes as well. And I'd hope to be able to apply for the county grant this upcoming year as well. With that said, there is still an overall reduction. Last year, we did increase it a bit. And so I think we are going to be able to decrease it. Again, it's just a recommendation from staff. Storm preparation and response. Now, this is really a direct response as to what we experienced in June with the heavy rains. I think we were the first or the second highest municipality in Dade County for rainfall. And so, however, we're not getting any of the expenses reimbursed by FEMA for that. And so there's always a possibility that we do storm preparation or response, and we're going to have to eat the cost. Now, we had money in the budget, and I was, for the most part, able to cover the 10,000 plus that we had with the water trucks or the vacuum trucks that came in for several days. But I thought it would be responsible for us to put that within the budget to be able to have there, so that we have an area where if we need to do a response to something, there's a line item, and it's not the emergency reserves or anything like that. And we wouldn't have to worry because it's not being refunded by FEMA. So that's why I put the 10,000 there. You'll also see that fuel, again, cost of fuels has gone up. So there's an increase on what Public Works. Last year, all fuel was under police, but we knew that police wasn't the only one doing fuel. Because we are using North Miami, each vehicle that we have has a gas card. Now, the only vehicles that get fuel for that are village are police vehicles and Public Works vehicles. Employees for personal vehicles, myself, the chief, command staff, nor the Public Works director receives any type of gas at this area. So I want to make that perfectly clear.
Including code in police.
Code does go because it's a village vehicle, correct. But we do not receive any gas in there. But that system allows us to identify where the majority of the money goes for fuel. And so when we separated by the departments, code, Public Works, and police, we were able to now, instead of putting everything under police, we started putting them under the right department that they belong in. So fuel for Public Works never existed, but now it does. So you see that there.
So you're saying these numbers that we're seeing this time around for fuel are a reflection of actual, because they're
For the department, correct.
These are not best guesses. These are now based on actual last year, current year.
They're forecasted based on usage of current year, correct. The flatbed truck, and I do apologize, the Public Works spreadsheet that you see here must have been one of the drafts that I uploaded, and I'll correct that tomorrow. We do see that the flatbed truck does come off for the village. Our lease is up this month, as a matter of fact. So the truck is the one that almost looks like a mini garbage truck, or mainly for the landscapers. They use those type of trucks. So that is coming off the books. We will have it free and clear after we pay $1 in September. You'll see in the spreadsheet that we put a new truck lease for $12,291. This is an error. I took this off. So this, we don't have that there because I was looking to balance for 9.5. The trucks that Public Works does have, they are 1 diesel, 2 gasoline, and I think the youngest one is like 2009 or something like that. So it is very old. They could use new trucks, but for this purpose, although it says we added 12,291 to the budget, we did not. So this is an error, and I'll make sure to update, and I do apologize again for that. Dumpster service, we want to make sure that we have, in case there's any issues, again, that would require some additional, the large 20-ton container. We have that part of the contract with Great Waste. It's sitting in the yard whenever we need. If it gets full, it used to be more frequent, but with the chipper that we ended up buying, that's gone down. But we do want to have budget there in case we do need stuff thrown out and serviced. That's not the normal garbage that all the departments receive as part of the contract. To address some of the questions within Public Works, this was an initial discussion when the director was hired. Some members of the community and some commission wanted to know, all of the employees within Biscayne Park are the lowest employees salary wise in the county, including myself. There's no village manager that's making under $120,000. Okay, so I want to make that clear. Our director of Public Works on average is $120,000 to $130,000, which is what market rate dictates. And so the increase in the director's salary is 6%, which is the same as every single other employee. He does a lot more than just supervise 3 people. We do have 5 people actually in Public Works, but he's also a certified civil engineer. He's helped quite a bit getting the storm drain project up and running, even up to getting into the procurement phase alone. So he's overseeing that project. He's overseeing quite a bit of the CITT reporting aspects and working with CITT to make sure we don't go back into not properly spending the money and having CITT take money away, as this administration has been able to stop them from doing. He's assisting with being able to move forward with ARP funds and several other projects that are moving along the way. When we talk about the projects for the park, for the log cabin and all that, and needing someone to see those projects, supervise those projects and move through that, we have the civil engineer that's going to be able to guide us through that and work with the contractor to do so. If not, we would have to hire a consultant per project to be able to manage that aspect of the work for the village, which will cost a lot more than what we are paying our director. The car allowance for myself and for the director is standard practice within government for senior managers, especially because we're on call 24/7. And so often our public works manager, before calling in overtime for our guys to come in and work, comes in 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night to assess whether we need to address something right now or we can do something the next day during normal business hours, or if it's in the weekend, wait until Monday. He has come in on the weekends, he has come in at night. Just this week, I'm not sure how, but there was a tree that the roots or the base of the trunk, there was a large popping sound. And the resident called us in, police took a look, it did not look safe. He went out, did an assessment, it looked like the tree was about to fall. We called in so that we can cut that tree down, put it safely so that it doesn't fall on property or vehicles or anybody driving through. So it is standard practice. If we're hoping to keep employees and employees who are talented, we're going to have to start acting like a normal city. And that is something that this commission has been supporting this administration with since day one. And I think the culture that we have right now is a stark difference than what had been here in the past, from employee morale to the applications that we get of people wanting to be here and then stay here. And so we could find somebody cheaper who is not a qualified, in my opinion, to run a public works department. We had an employee before who was not qualified, and there were a lot of issues within the department that we're still cleaning up today. So I just wanted to point that out to explain why we have the director we have and how that salary increase is just the 6%. The cell phones, and I'm sorry, the cell phone, different employees have different rates because there's different plans on what they have. We have a standard rate plan. However, several employees have hotspots. Some don't have hotspots on their phones. And so depending what kind of usage that they're going to get and what they use. So myself, the director, the chief, I believe one or both of the commanders, the clerk, our phones turn into hotspots. So when we need it, because the internet is not reliable in Biscayne Park, when it goes down, or when we are working from home or somewhere else, or we're traveling, our cell phone becomes a hotspot. That data plan is included on it. Other employees don't need that because they're not working on a laptop if they're not going to be here. And so we don't need to incur that additional cost if it's not necessary. And so we look at it from that perspective, and that's why there's different costs and different rates for cell phones for one employee compared to others. Commissioner Gonzalez, I believe you had a question.
I just wanted to ask you, one of the things that you were looking for when we were trying to find a public works director, which we had a really difficult time finding, was that the reporting piece in that department was a complete disaster. And there were certain reports and whatnot that needed to go to the state at certain times, and things were just not happening. I haven't heard anything, any update on that. Where are we with that as far as?
No issues. All agencies are appreciating that we're turning everything in on time, and we haven't had anything going back and forth because we're doing it as we're supposed to be doing it.
So he's caught up and he's up.
Yes.
With it.
We're up to date on all CITT, all county, and all state reports that need to be reported in regularly. Is there any other questions that anybody might have on Public Works? Vice Mayor?
I think Commissioner Kennedy did a good job explaining.
I have a couple of things. And I'll
Sure.
I hate to ask you to go backwards, Mario. I didn't understand what you said about 121st Street. You said you removed it. It's down $10,000 for landscaping, but then you said you're doing a buffer thing so people can't do the U-turn. So where is that being budgeted?
That's the current fiscal year. The current fiscal year has that.
You're going to get it done this fiscal year.
Correct. We're trying to finalize those plans. Albert's trying to finalize those plans now. We had presented
Plants or
something.
other things or a combination?
I'm sorry, say that again.
It's gonna be with plants or other hard things or a combination?
Probably a combination. That's what we're trying to narrow down. We did try to present something to the Parks and Parkway and before, They didn't like the type of plants that we were looking at. So we said that we would go back to that drawing board. And I believe they made some recommendations during that meeting. So Albert is looking to try to come up with a final solution with the costs and everything so that we can go ahead and do that. But that's a one-time cost.
That's why it's out, because you're going
Correct.
to that now.
Correct.
A dumb question. Have we ever approached the city of North Miami to give us, or not to give us the other side of 121st Street, that medium? Because it's really not that much. Have we ever decided to talk to them about that and see that if we
To
can
turn over the other side of the street?
Yeah.
They're not going to do that. That's going to reduce their revenue and their tax rate. So they're not going to give up those properties.
Okay.
I have a couple of other things. So the dumpster service. So are you saying you're budgeting for a dumpster? This is going to be separate from what's included in our Great Waste contract.
Correct.
There is some service for that in the
Correct.
contract.
Right. Normal bins that we have, 96 gallons and so forth. But throughout the year, there's certain needs where we do tons of waste. It used to be a lot more prior to this fiscal year when we bought the chipper, because we had a lot of yard waste that was being collected, especially on the medians. Now, for the most part, they shred it all and they try to reuse it for mulch and stuff like that. So that's really gone down. But we did want to have something within the budget in case we had quite a bit of waste to
So
go.
is it for the physical dumpster itself or the removal service or both?
Both.
Okay, so we don't have anything now, and this is going to be a permanent dumpster that's located here, or will they bring it here on an as-needed basis?
So what Great Waste,
I guess the way I should ask it is the money you put in the budget, is it something that's actually going to be spent, or is it in there in case we need it, and then it will happen?
we believe we're going to be spending, I don't know that we'll use the full 10,000, but I don't have a way to be able to narrow that down into a specific number. Because it's as needed. So Great Waste does leave a container at Public Works right now. And then whenever it gets full, we will call for service. Now, it used to be a couple times, 2 to 3 times a month. Now I think it's maybe once every month or 2 before we need it serviced. So it just depends on how often and what kind of activities Public Works is doing that will fill that container up.
So right now, part of our Great Waste contract allows for us to call them and say, the dumpster's full, come take the dumpster.
Correct.
Is there a maximum amount that's allowed per the contract?
No.
So then why would we need to provide for more if we could have them take more now?
I'm sorry, I don't. So
Not a maximum amount.
for the container, when they come and pick it up, it's an additional charge.
It is an additional.
Right, it's an additional charge, but it's already it allows us to do it within the contract. The normal trash, which is the 96 gallons, that would be picked up regularly. Right, that's part of the deal. So we're not paying for that, but if we need to move that type of container out, then that would be an additional charge, and it's a set amount already in there within the contract.
Okay. Some other things in here. Some things I'll talk to you about one-on-one. Some picky things. Item number 43, utilities, electric at the log cabin. There's nothing provided for. It's 0. But I know it's not this building, is it? Because that's part of administration. This building is administration.
Correct. So I believe at one point, it would fall under the Public Works. And so for the next one, you won't see this line item at all anymore because it's
I
zero.
ask is because we're planning to put in exterior lighting. So would that be part of the administration?
That would be part of administration,
Okay, so
correct?
we don't need to account for it here. That's
Not
what I
within
thought.
Public Works, no.
Okay. What are the building repairs in item 46 for $25,000?
That would be, again, we had been receiving several quotes for the roof that needs to be replaced over at the Public Works building. Right now, it's more of an equipment storage, but at one point it used to be the offices before the new building went in. We then,
That secondary building.
correct. And then we moved some of that money for a purchase. And I'm trying to remember exactly if it was for, part of it, I believe, was the water pump. We ended up moving some of that money out of there for the water pump.
Pines, pine removal, 30 grand we have.
Mhm.
How many pines will that remove and how many more do we have? I shouldn't put you on the spot like this. How many will that pay to be removed? I should remember the amount per pine and how many more pines are on the list that should be removed? I think they were like levels 8, 9, and 10 you were trying to get removed.
So we didn't do any pine removal because again, that money was transferred for something else within the budget. I think it was between the pine removal and the shed is what paid for the water pump. I may be mistaken and I'll have to double check, but I think that's where the majority of the money came from. So we didn't remove any this fiscal year.
Well, we did, but we didn't use that line.
No, we didn't pay for any pine removal this year. What was removed was the pines in this fiscal year was from Griffin, which is the county. Right. So we didn't incur any costs on that. That was the county that took care of their own trees. And so for the 30,000, I believe gets us about 16 to 20, if I'm not mistaken.
Have that many more to remove?
There is quite a bit left to remove, although some right now we would be addressing mainly it's on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the worst conditions. I think we would be addressing the 8s and kind of trying to work our way backwards. I'm not sure. I believe we took care of the 10s and if not all of the 9s as well, most of them.
So you think that would take care of the 8s and we're kind of got the worst of the worst?
The worst of the worst, correct.
Okay, the increase in storm prep, you're saying that's all for vac trucks?
It could be almost for anything, right? From purchasing sand so that we can distribute sandbags to the residents when we're expecting a tropical storm or a hurricane. It could be for vac trucks. We need more. It could be for additional, overtime for public works or anything. It could be for anything response related to a storm.
Do we have enough? Does your staff have enough things in the way of barricades?
Yes.
You're good now.
Yes.
And I know that Sally asked us the day she was here if there
Yeah.
was anything else. Are we getting anything?
We
from that?
we bought several barricades. They're called I think they're called type 2, which is kind of like an A frame. They look like the letter A or an upside down letter V. Those are the smaller ones. We have enough of the large ones that help cut off the street, but we found in this last time when we put all the barricades out, although they help close the traffic lane, there's still a lot of space left in the swale for the turn. So people were just going around.
Destroying yards.
Exactly. So we bought enough of the barricades so that we can have those swales covered up with barricades as
You're
well.
completely good. If
We
there's
should
another
be.
major flood event, all the different places that. are
We
completely
should
flooded.
be good. Yes.
If you aren't, let us know. Because that's a real issue when that happens. $5,000 for park benches. Do you know how many benches that's going to buy? Is this over the next couple of years kind of a plan, or what are you planning to do with that?
If you give me 1 second. So this was a small project that Miss Amy Raymond actually presented to Parks and Parkway, and then Parks and Parkway presented to the commission to upgrade some of the park benches that we have, to be more of recyclable material because they now have a lot of park benches like that, and something a lot more comfortable, a little bit higher.
Taking out the tops?
Right. Taking out a lot of our park benches are wood benches, and so it would remove having any splinters and things like that, and it would just last longer. So the 5,000, some of the catalogs that we've seen range between $700 to $900 per park bench. So we're estimating at the 900, we're estimating about 5 to 6 park benches for 5,000, which I think take care of the biggest ones here at the log cabin, the one at that triangle on the other side of 6th Avenue, and some other places which she's identified. And I don't have the information in front of me right now, but the idea would be to eventually replace all the park benches, not the mosaic ones, but all the park benches. But I think this kind of gives us like, and I'm looking at David, I think the 5 or 6 replace almost like half of everything that was pointed out. So we're looking
Next
like,
year, we could do it again
and we would be
we'll make sure we get
completely done.
benches that will be available sort of as an.
Or if the commission wants to raise it to 10,000 and try to do, all 10 or so now, that's the option that the
Well, I'm
commission.
just really happy to see it in the budget altogether. So I was really
It's something we definitely promised that we would put in there.
very pleased about that. And if we could maybe get a couple of more done, I'd be supportive of that. But we have a lot going on in here. So I'm
Mhm.
happy to see that we could get 5 or 6 for now. What is the mini excavator attachment that's on the same page?
Again, I apologize. I deleted that from it. It's a request that that Public Works had. Many times they have to do various type of digging in the medians. So instead of renting the equipment, there's I call it the mini excavator, but it's almost like a trailer hitch that you can use. Put it to the back of a vehicle, move it around, and then you can use it. It's almost like a glorified Tonka truck aspect where it's, you move it.
Taking it out? It should not.
It's not in there, no.
What do you mean it's not in there? It is in there. You're taking it out. It shouldn't be in there.
So again, in the latest updated, this was one expense that I removed from it. As I mentioned earlier, I did upload the draft. It was final, but then I needed to make some concessions because of a different department that we'll look at. And this expense was one that we pulled out.
Working from the original.
I understand. And again, I do apologize.
The weed killer, what is that used for? Just as curious as David Raymond is. And that has nothing to do with, from what I understand from back when I was on Parks and Parkways, that has nothing to do with the athletic field. That comes out of the rec center budget, right?
Correct.
Maintenance of that field.
Mhm.
What is that used for?
They buy weed killer to use throughout the village to help control the weeds that we have.
Like spraying it on the grass or?
Correct.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe that's a conversation for another day, because I would love this village to be more.
I know they don't use what's that?
Roundup?
They don't use Roundup. It's one of those that the county does essentially approve, but if, it's one of those aspects where we do only have 5 guys and there's quite a bit of work that they do,
No,
so.
I understand. To me, weeds aren't necessarily the end of the world, and I just hate the idea of spraying fertilizer for that matter. I don't like any of these things because they all, in addition to, the direct danger of people being on it, it's going into the groundwater, it's going into our canal, it ends up in the bay, and it ends up everywhere in our world. We're not getting away from it. Those were the big things. Oh, there's one other thing regarding your staff, the bonuses. They're not very big, and I see that, I'm assuming that the ones that I see in the road fund, I know that some of the parks or public works employees are assigned to the road fund.
Mhm.
So those are the same bonuses that are built into that budget. Yeah.
Mhm.
If there were a way for us to get more money in there for you or Albert or whomever assigns these bonuses when they're earned,
It's part of their union contract.
we can't change that amount?
No, we would have to amend the CBA.
Couldn't increase it even.
We would have to go back and,
Really?
yeah, and once you give it to them, you're not taking it away.
Fair enough. I'm just trying to, they're very hardworking people, and it seems like not.
I agree, but
Not a very big bonus.
They-
If there were a way for us to.
go ahead, Paul. Can we unmute Paul? I don't see him in front of me.
I wasn't saying anything.
Oh, okay.
And then the last thing.
Did you
I
have a
would say-
question?
No, I thought I heard you speak, so I apologize.
That was an echo. I heard it too.
And then the last thing I want to say is the landscape maintenance budget, 46.2. I understand how you shifted some things around there, but overall it is decreased. And I personally feel like our public spaces and our gardens are very important, and everything in that category. Yeah, I know we can spend money all around that category. It is a decrease from 111 to 95. And I would like to, if there were a way to keep more money in there for projects that, we want to work on for our green spaces, I would be very supportive of that.
Right. Absolutely not a problem. The biggest decrease, if I'm not mistaken, is again the 121 median and the median sod pilot program. So that's $12,000.
And some of those
That was
things, log
shifted over.
cabin, rec center, things that were done and not
Those-
budgeted for again.
Those were all moved into that $35,000 line item of tree planting and capping and landscaping.
Understood.
But yeah, it's
We're used to spending
absolutely,
that amount- if we're used to spending that amount of money total, regardless of where it falls on a line in there, if we can do it, I'm supportive of that.
not a problem.
Is the 115th Street median project that you're going to do, the idea of that was to, if, everyone.
To move it on to different streets.
on to different things. So if we could.
Completely understand.
That'd be great. That's it.
So the next department is Parks and Recreation. The biggest increases and why you see this department having the biggest increase in overall percentage wise is because we are putting $50,000 back into the parking surface project that was removed earlier this year to help account for the various budget amendments that we had back in March and April. This 50,000 is also a match for a grant in which we applied to with the state. We've asked for $300,000 for the parking surfaces and some equipment for the tot lot. And they required a match, and we put in 50 grand for that match. We don't have an update on that grant application yet. I think they're due now in August, so we probably won't hear anything whether we get that money or not until after we approve the budget. The awnings over the tot lot, they're at their lifespan. Issa over the years has done everything he can to repair them, to extend their lives. However, we recently, there's some significant tears on them, and he had a contractor come out to take a look to see if we can make some repairs. He's trying to get a quote to see what can be repaired, but he said, listen, if we can do something, it's not going to last you that long. They're at a point where you're going to have to replace them. Ballpark figure that he gave us was 40,000 to replace those awnings.
Issa or the contract?
The contractor. So it's just one quote. We would have to go back and take a look and see other vendors that do that. But we use that 40,000 ballpark to put it into the budget. So you see an 86,000 or 90,000, I'm sorry, for those two projects that go in there. We also had, and I just want to be able to show, we do have some increases in certain areas as well, although not significant. For special events, where we have Halloween, movie night, Winterfest, Springfest, with the cost of everything going up, we just wanted to make sure we would have enough for that. Some you'll see, although we spent more, their expenditures, Great Waste did do multiple sponsorships for these events. So like for Halloween, for example, we only had 2,000, we spent about 3,300. However, although we spent the 3,300, that difference really came from Great Waste monetarily as well. So you'll see that we wanted to make sure we had cost with the increase. We're actually National Night Out, although it's zero, we're rolling that into back to school events. So we're combining both events into one. It's going to save time because both events would happen in August. And so it's going to save time. I'll make sure to clearly indicate it's National Night Out / back to school, so that essentially less work for ESA to plan one event as opposed to trying to plan two separate events back to back. I did not put the jazz in here, but that's something that if the commission wants to add into, again, my intent was to present the commission with a 9.5 millage rate. We did ask all the advisory boards to give us their request, and you'll see those requests in the August meeting so that the commission can come to a consensus on. But I did balance all the requests to keep a 9.5 and then allow you all to address where you wanted to go up or down or change. Adding in here, the jazz event would have pushed me over that edge. And I said, let the commission look at this and see where they want to cut and add for that instead. Okay. So those were some of the key differences that we've put in there. We did do some reduction, operating supplies and everything. After talking to Issa, he was able to come down on those expectations. He does have, and I know it's not reflected here, but I know he was participating in a national parks conference. I'm not sure if it's already happened or if it's happening now, but that's going to be reflected within the expenses as well. So again, you see here the two projects for their. Initially, I was hoping to be able to put in the rubber floors for the tot lot. Right now, we use mulch. It's better to have. It's literally a rubber floor. I don't know how else to explain it, and it has a little bit of a bounce, but that can cost anywhere between $15,000 to $30,000 in there. And again, trying to come back to a 9.5 budget, there's certain things that we ended up taking out, but I thought it was worth at least kind of putting here within the budget. Before moving on, is there questions from the commission on Parks and Rec, or do you want me to move on?
I have a couple of things.
Sure.
So I understand you don't know about the grant for the rec center parking. Do you know that $50,000 would be enough for what they'd want from us for a match, or would that be based on the amount that you get?
So the state would love a dollar for dollar match, but there's no way we can afford a $300,000. And so we put it at 300.
So you get to sort of bid on what your match would.
Right. So we put 50,000. If they want to come down to 50,000 and make it a dollar for dollar, that's fine. But I was going to ask for at least 300. I think when we initially first talked about it, I wanted, and what my initial application was going to be sent in was for 600,000, which would have replaced the playground equipment for the tot lot, put the floor down, do all phases of the parking for around the recreation, and there was something else as well. The natural gas and the generator. When we submitted and was talking to the rep who would be sponsoring us, they said, "Listen, we're not gonna sponsor anything over 300,000, and if you can put a match, it would be better." So we reduced that to reflect their wishes. So we're putting in for that 300 with a 50,000. Let them reduce it to 50, but I was going to ask for, they told us they don't mind, they're comfortable with 300. So I put it at that max. Yeah. The 50,000, and just to clarify, the 50,000 will be enough for one section. I forget which section it is right now, but it based on Calvin Giordano's cost estimates, it should be at least for one section of it.
The northwest section that would have paid for.
It may have been.
Okay. So, okay. So Jazz Fest, I also support us funding Jazz Fest. So just for the record, that was a fabulous event, And boy, that just, on very little notice, they pulled that together and that was wonderful. And I think Jazz Fest could really kind of put Biscayne Park on the map in some ways because there's a void in jazz festivals here in the Miami area. The athletic field, what all is included in that $10,000? Single thing, but sort of generally, and in 46.
So Isa is on the call.
Oh,
I'm gonna ask to unmute so he can give you a little bit better description.
because it doesn't look like
It
we're
is-
spending it.
It goes into phases. The park and rec budget is much more back end heavy than it is front end. Because of the weather and when things and the playgrounds and the programs that come around. So he'll be able to kind of describe the 10,000 is really the bare minimum that we're able to put in. It probably costs a lot more to actually use to have those fields in a condition that they can use for several programs. But Isa, if you can kind of talk a little bit more about it.
Yep. Good evening, Commissioner, Mayor, Commissioners, residents. So like the manager was saying, it is a very back end of the fiscal year type spending there. During the summer months and rainy season is when we do most of our applications and just activity on the field. This year, we were happy to have a soccer camp that was also using the field. So whenever we had soccer program that went through the whole first half of the year. But that $10,000 covers everything from irrigation, the fixing the pump, which we had to do this year. And we already have, what's not reflected in there is 2 June, I think, payments because we're up to date to 5/31. But so the numbers are a little deceiving, but that $10,000, like the manager said, is the bare minimum. We definitely need to keep that there, especially for just irrigation, unforeseen things that might happen with the irrigation, the pump system, treating the field, and because of increased activity, we definitely need to keep that there if possible.
Okay. Thank you, Isa. And it does generate income. It's important to remember as well. So Mario, my last question in this department is item 40, line 45, whatever you call these things, number 45, property and liability insurance. The numbers don't jive there somehow. If you look at the breakdown page, unless I'm not understanding it. It says you marked flood insurance red, like don't touch it, but the budget is 0. Are these taken care of somewhere else? Or is this on the original? There you go. No, that's not it.
No.
45. Is that one?
Paul, I think overall it shows 0, but I think they put it in the line item right above it. So if you see above the 0, it says 7,074. So I believe that's where they're indicating for that property or for this department aspect of it.
Okay, so Paul, what I'm seeing under for flood and auto/building, the individual breakdowns is what's showing through May, and then the total for amended 2022 and 2023 budget, those are the numbers we compare.
Drops down. Correct.
Okay, fair enough. It's strange to look at that way because it's the way it breaks down. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
So again, on this slide is showing what the budget comparison between fiscal year 22 and 23 is. 22 personnel was 2,011,000. In 23, currently it's 2.1, almost 2.2 million. Operating 1,311,000. For 23, it's 1,371,000. Capital about 13,000. Where in fiscal year 23, we're close to 100,000. So interfund transfer out, you'll see for the building fund, it's moving from the general fund into the building of 42,970 and 17. And overall, based on different contingencies, there's about 3,000. Projected general fund balance. So this is, it's a fund balance. but a lot of people have they make a mental connection with their personal finances. So a lot of times we tend to refer to it as a savings account, right? You have your checking and you have your savings. So I'm trying to make that little connection so people can understand and when they try to relate it to their personal finances. However, the fund balance is what is used in cases of emergency, if we need to supplement the general fund because we're not receiving enough revenue and our expenses are higher than what our revenues come in or anything like that. Since I first came on board, we've all talked about, and I think for the most part, we've all been in agreement. We've wanted to have 100% match in the general fund that we have for the year. Just Irma alone cost about 1.1 to 1.2 million for cleanup. And we didn't receive those funds, and we're still missing some funds, but and it's been more than 4 years. So we wanted to be able to have a general fund that could protect us if we have a storm. And then what if the year after there's another one? How do we do where do we get that money if we used up all that money? Now, knowing that the cost of everything goes up, we know if we have at least a Irma style storm, it's going to be at least 1.2. Or it could be more than that, correct? How do we put money into it? Since 2018, I think Paul has done the best job he possibly can, and I give him his accolades, and we do this every year. It's almost like a broken record when we talk about it. The way that Biscayne Park is able to put money into the general fund is two ways. One, we need to continue to budget at 95% of revenue. What does that mean? If we're going to receive $100, just to make the math simple for me, if we're going to receive $100 worth of revenue, we're going to try to match our expenses to $95 so that we're not going to go all the way up to that 100%. We don't do that for a couple of reasons. One, because although everybody has to pay property taxes, everybody pays different amounts. What I mean by that is if you pay early, you get a 4% discount. So we need to be able to accommodate for that. If you may not pay, some resident may not pay anything that year, and the houses might go into foreclosures, so then we wouldn't receive property taxes for that. So in order to be able to have a buffer so that we're not all the way up to the line and get to that point where we have more expenditures than revenue, we budget at a 95% of the expected revenue. So we're automatically creating a 5% buffer, hopefully year over year, that at the end of the fiscal year goes into the general fund. And that's how Paul and his team since 2018 has been able to replenish the general fund. The other aspect is having an administration that is conservative in the expenditures. The budget that's being presented to you, I think, is everything that we'll need. But throughout the year, it doesn't mean that on October 1st, we whip out a credit card and use $2.7 million. We try to see where we can save money throughout the year. And if something comes up, can we move some of that money? Yeah, but it's not the full amount. Okay, well, we can't do that project. We might have $5,000 left over. If we don't need to spend that $5,000, then at the end of the year, whatever's left over goes into the general fund, right? A clear example of that this year is going to be when our second code officer left. Instead of immediately hiring somebody, we were going to give that job to an internal candidate. However, that internal candidate needed to meet certain requirements before fully taking over that role. They did not meet that requirement and then subsequently left the village. So those months, there was a savings. That savings will roll into the general fund. So we're projecting that on September 30th, 2022, we will have 3.116843 in our general fund, which is pretty close to 100%. And I'm really, really proud of that number. Now, you will remember last year, we put 21,000 into it and still be able to meet the 9.5 millage. Other cities, they have certain rules within their charter or their policies or internal policies in which they will put X amount of dollars into the general fund to reach a certain threshold year over year. So we did that. However, in this year, the commission took upon themselves to have a conversation, a couple conversations of what can we do and what's feasible for us. And the decision was this year, we were going to allocate a certain percentage of what the general fund would look like for emergencies. So we would essentially have one general fund for 3.1 million. And of the 3.1 million in the ordinance, which you will approve in September, you all will restrict 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, whatever percentage the commission wants, restrict it to be used only for a response to an emergency. And so that is how it's almost like a hybrid method to be able to control what those funds are used for. Technically, right now, the commission on August 16th at their next meeting can do a first reading to say, we want to throw a party for $3 million and we're going to use those funds. So to help prevent that from happening, adding that kind of caveat in the ordinance would restrict it. At any point, any commission, whether it's in as part of an ordinance, can always go in and change things, but it starts putting some more regulations that don't exist today. And I applaud the commission for having that conversation and making that decision, in which you all will get to show you.
Sorry, Mario, can I just say one thing about what you just said?
Sure.
Thank you for explaining that like that, because we discussed that a couple of months ago. So that will be coming back to us in the final ordinance.
Correct.
And all we have to do is determine what that percentage is.
Correct.
When will we have that discussion?
I think the final will be the second reading. And I think I would recommend at least 50% of the
When will we
3.1.
start? I know we'll vote on it in the readings, but when will we start discussing what that percentage would look like?
You can
Next budget hearing?
You can start having that discussion tonight. You can have that discussion on Thursday if it wants to be a line item in a recommendation. We're estimating 3.1. So we're really looking at about 1.6 million for half of that. To be able, I would at least put 50% into it, but that is a discussion. I think that each one of you will probably make those type of recommendations when you're supplying all your budget changes.
You want us to do that? Okay. So all we have to do is the five of us have to agree to a percentage.
Correct.
And just to clarify one little thing you said in case of an emergency, I think what we agreed to was an emergency or a significant capital project kind of a thing, is if there was some other.
No, the assigned, so there's two.
I thought there was language that
It's called unassigned and assigned.
Right.
And so the assigned means it can only be used for one thing. So you would have the assigned for emergency responses, and then the unassigned can be used for capital projects or anything really. So you will still have that bucket.
The case anyway.
Right. You'll still have that bucket, but the conversation and how it was ending was, we want to be able to have, in case there's a major storm or a plane falls and causes major damage or whatever, there's a bucket for that type of response that we can go into without using that for capital projects or anything else. You still have a bucket to use for capital projects, but the commission wanted to protect for those type of emergency
I understand.
situations.
I mean, I'm the one that brought it up for us.
Yeah, because if not, then it's just the general fund, because it would use for anything.
I'll look back in the notes, but I was certain that the language that we talked about was, I'll look back. There was something, and and I didn't invent it. I went and found it somewhere else, and I think it was North Bay Village. It was some other community had language that we kind of liked, and it was in case of an emergency or like something major, like physical capital kind of a thing. I'll look back,
Okay.
but I could have sworn we kind of broadened it a little bit because we needed to sort of cover our butts in different directions.
So this slide shows that in 2018, right after Irma was one of the lowest times. And I think, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it probably even dipped lower than the 600,000, correct?
Correct. Yeah, your actual cash was close to $200,000.
Right. So actual cash, we did get some money back. So at the end of the year, it shows as 600, but at one point it was down to 200,000. And that's been a steady increase where we are now at 3.1. We're almost at that 100%. So it's budgeting at 95% and being conservative on expenditures on all line items is something that I will encourage the commission to continue to do now and for the foreseeable future.
Mario, do you have the general fund budget summary slide up there somewhere? I haven't seen it. Do you have that up there or no?
This one?
No, the one that we have in our little.
Oh,
Well, the first two slides, general fund revenue and the.
okay.
Do you have that up there?
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so listen, guys, here's my concern for Biscayne Park. We're trying to keep this at 9.5 and keep it flat, right? And because property prices have continued to skyrocket, we're generating an additional $357,000 approximately, correct? Right? And we've pretty much spent that already. That $357,000 is pretty much spent, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So Biscayne Park, right? I mean, everybody knows it's just basically based revenue is the majority of the revenue comes from home prices. So my concern for Biscayne Park, guys, is that honestly, we are getting very expensive. And what happens if there's a significant downturn in the market? You know, I remember the housing crisis that we had not too long ago. And from what I'm seeing, we're heading into another recession, and so it's concerning the cost to operate this village at this point. It really is. For me, it's concerning. Mario, I wanted to ask you about the franchise fees on here, Mario. You have is that the Great Waste? Is Great Waste budgeted in there?
No, it's not.
Okay, you already took that
Franchise
out?
fees. I'm sorry?
You took that out?
Right. This budget does not reflect the franchise fee for Great Waste.
Okay, so what is that franchise fees that's budgeted?
Electrical, communications, and utility franchise fees. There's multiple that the village has that is collected from a
Oh,
state level.
okay, so that is, it's still there in theory because we haven't agreed to give it back to them or give it to them, correct? I mean, in theory, that money is,
No,
it's not even there.
it's not reflected in there at all.
But would it be there?
It would be
At $100,000, would be there?
Paul, where would the Great Waste franchise fee in the revenue be shown typically?
Sorry, needed to unmute. It's built into all the franchise fees. It's listed there. But she's removed it, I believe.
Okay, so the 127, it would be in that line item, but it's not reflected in fiscal year 23 in there.
So we just took it out because we're anticipating that we're going to give them the franchise fee?
Correct.
We're budgeting as though it won't be received, correct?
So I mean, there is a
We have
potential.
not decided that.
Right, I understand that, and that's the point. So another question here. What is the service charge for police? What is that?
That is essentially the off-duty jobs that they do.
Okay,
We don't budget for it. and that is paid through multiple cities that will pay us, and then we pay the officer.
Got it. So that's a wash.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a pass through.
Grants. Tell me a little bit about grants. Projected for this year is 14,000 and you're projecting 0?
Currently, we're not gonna show any until we have a contract signed. We're not gonna be showing the grants, and grants would be restricted.
Mhm.
So even though you will see it as a revenue coming in, the expenses would also go up because they're restricted on what they're allowed to use. So once we get the final money from Department of Environmental Protection for the 2 grants from them,
Mhm.
and we get the FDOT grant, you'll start seeing revenue being put in there. But until we have that final contract signed
Okay.
by the state and by us, it's not going to reflect there.
But you also don't see the expenses related to them in
Correct.
either. So all of it's missing. So for example, if you
Correct.
$300,000 for the rec center parking, we would then be recognizing $300,000 in revenue that we're not budgeting for, but we would add $300,000
Correct.
in expenditures that aren't there as well. So it in essence becomes a wash. So
Correct.
that's why we don't see them here.
Yes, sir.
Other revenue. Explain that one to me.
Other,
You have a projected
Yep.
other revenue of
Paul,
36,000?
can you answer that?
Yeah, originally it used to be quite a bit of money, 30,000 or so. And it's over time, we've identified the correct revenue source for certain things, not to say correct, a better, more specific revenue source. So it's down to only $7,500 for 2023. So it's various income, interests from somebody paying late or something like that. Like there's some weird little revenues that we get.
But we've projected 36,000 for this year, right? And what you're saying is that you've identified it and that's going into a different line? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's better identified, and we're definitely not going to project it like that. This one, I don't have it right in front of me, but I'm pretty sure it was kind of a one-off, unusual repayment that we didn't expect to get. That's why it was projected. It's projected high.
Okay. All right.
Would that be, I'm sorry to interrupt, Paul, would that be some of the liens and everything that we've received this last fiscal year?
That would make sense. Yeah, it would be things along those lines. Things that just don't have a specific line item from a pure accounting standpoint. We have to give them a line item so they fall there. So if they don't meet the initial category, we book them that way. And then throughout the year, we can reroute them through the audit process. So really, that's the type of line item you really answer 6 months from now.
I'm glad you brought that up, Mario, because I was talking to Mario before the meeting. Our code fine revenue is really significantly down this current fiscal year over the prior fiscal year. And I asked Mario why, and I thought it might be because in the prior year, we had collected on several rather significant liens. And I thought that's what it was. So Paul, you're suggesting that this other revenue would be that? Because I don't think it can be, because it's not enough. We can, in fiscal 21, it says here that other revenue was like 29, and we collected liens well in advance of that. So I don't think it could be that. So where are liens? I'd like to know, if you can't answer it now, Paul, for next time around, where liens are recognized as income revenue.
I'll find out. Yep, and we'll have that for you.
I'd appreciate that, because we had some, not that we budget for liens, but we do know how much, what's out there in the form of liens. And we did collect some really significant liens. I want to say there were 2 in one night, remember? That came in all at one time, and it was like $75,000 or something, So I'd like to know
Right.
where that is.
So code enforcement doesn't have a revenue line, so it has to be somewhere in these revenue code, line items. So that would make sense to me that it would be there. And we just, as a typical budget strategy, we've dropped it way back because we don't expect it to be like that again.
Maybe fines and forfeitures?
Say that again?
Maybe
Yeah,
fines
that's
and
likely.
forfeitures?
Oh, maybe,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, so Art, back to what you were saying about the Great Waste franchise fee. So this is Mario's, what he's proposing to us for a budget, and he has taken it out, so it's not recognized as revenue. So we need to have that discussion because it's a big impact on our revenue. And so I'm glad you brought it up, because I wanted to know, I know that it's not budgeted, and the amount is $82,000. I think someone had thrown the figure out that it was about 100. It's 82, according to somewhere I read in here. So if we decide to, forego that franchise fee, that's $82,000 that would be, in here as revenue somewhere that we come up with out of our own pocket, which means residents are paying for it. So it's money that we pay solid waste fees, all of us do. We pay Great Waste, and they give a piece of it back to us. They're not giving it back. It's like we're paying it again, So we need to decide on that, and it's a significant amount of money,
It'll be before you, Commissioner Kennedy, at the August commission meeting.
Here's the piece of that puzzle I don't understand. I know that, maybe I don't know. Let me ask you a question. That revenue that we recognize from the franchise fee, that's budgeted out across departments, right? Pieces of it all over the place impact different departments. Is that correct? I thought it was kind of parceled out among other departments and spent that way.
Revenue is revenue, right?
Right, revenue is revenue, and then where the expenditures, so although
Does it just go in the general fund? Because I thought it was then as an expense sort of shared among.
it goes into the general fund, all expenditures are paid from the general fund unless it's building, CITT, or the road fund.
So it's not like the road fund where a certain percentage goes and is assigned to the Public Works Department, for example.
No, the road fund pays itself, and we have expenditures in that road fund
You
for
put
itself.
employees in that fund.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not like that in other words.
No.
Okay, I thought it was.
So that would just go and be recognized as just revenue overall. And then the expenditures, you tend to have a balanced budget. So you have a zero for that. So it just depends on what the commission wishes to do.
And Mario, if you could just explain also the capital lease proceeds, what is that?
Essentially, there needs to be a line item that shows all the various leases that we have, the vehicles and all for the auditing purposes and all that. So that shows, because for example, when you pay off a vehicle, you're assuming that value of it. So we need to be able to mark down. So when the auditors take a look, they can see that there's a line item that brings on that value onto the books essentially. Correct. That's why it's zero. Right. It's not even technically revenue. We have the value. The only way we see that value come in is if we sell the cars. So you see that as zero in there, but we have that line item so that once those leases are paid off, which this year we had 4, for example, the value of those cars are basically put on as assets for the village. Paul, did I explain that right? Because Sharon had to explain that to me.
Yes, that's perfect. And like we were talking about with the other revenue, that this has a line item, it's required. Should we change our mind and decide to cash out one of these, vehicles that have equity or value, it has to be transferred as an income.
So Mario, if you can talk a little bit about going back to what I said earlier, that we're really just getting very expensive. The city is dependent on really pretty much one revenue stream, and we're getting very expensive. But if you can talk a little bit about your mentality of the 9.5 to the 9.7 and how that relates to this particular issue. I know that you and I have had this discussion, but I would like you to share that with the public.
And I've said it multiple times to a lot of different people. This isn't my money. And so I side on a very ultra conservative aspect of it. I think I've spoken to each and every one of you. I have stayed up at night during hurricane season because we're 2 years or back-to-back storms from, and Paul, please, if you need to tone down my exaggerations or anything, please jump in. But I feel that we're 2 storm years back-to-back from being bankrupt. If we're saying that cleanup in this village is going to be between $1.5 to $2 million, we're not going to have money. And then what's going to happen is similar to what happened with El Portal. El Portal had to take out a loan or multiple loans and credit cards just to pay regular expenditures. El Portal has a saving grace this fiscal year. That commission, that mayor, and that city manager was able to bring in 2 very large developments that is going to bring in over $20 million and increase their tax base. Biscayne Park doesn't have that option. So if we need to take out loans and use credit cards just to recover from hurricane damage because we are tapped out, we don't have that type of option. We have started to talk about lowering the density by eliminating zone C that allows for duplex and triplex and things like that into single family use only. So if anybody buys a property and demolishes a duplex, they can only build a single family. That's a conversation that we're just starting to have. Hasn't happened yet, but you're in a time where there's not enough housing in the county, in the state, in the nation. There's not enough affordable housing. Property values are going up. Right now, we're enjoying it. But if we do hit another recession, I don't think Biscayne Park is like some of what I've coined luxury communities, Sunny Isles, Surfside, where the majority of all these properties that are being bought are not primary residences. They're second, third, fourth, fifth residences. And they're mainly from out of state, out of country investors that are keeping their money safe from wherever they're coming from. And so I think if we ever get hit, and there's markets that say that property values are already starting to see a 20% decline in other states, I don't think Florida will see that at least for another couple years. And that wouldn't impact the village for probably another couple years after that. But there is going to be a point in time where the revenue coming in is not going to be enough for expenditures without making drastic cuts. The majority of the money that we do for expenditures is not on projects. It's on people. People who are already the lowest paid in their fields, and we're short-staffed at the end of the day.
Yep.
And so there are a lot of hard decisions. Projects that should have been done over the last 25 years were never done.
But I wanted you to focus your point on why you like to see a cushion of 9.5 to the 9.7.
I like to see the millage go down because of all of those reasons. Because for me, and this is just the way that I operate, okay? There's not a clear right way or wrong way here. My mindset is if we can operate right now and lower the millage and still provide all the projects and do the things that we're doing, then if we do come into some type of recession or something where property values go up, even though it's only 20 to 30,000, we have the cushion to raise the tax rate to get that additional 20, 30, 40,000, whatever it is, multiple times wherever we can. If we're already at a 9.6 or a 9.7 and we're going forward, and we need to reduce because we won't have the revenue to support, and we don't have that cushion to move the tax bracket up. So for me, I'd rather be lower while trying to do as much as we can. Some others will think, well, I'd rather have the cash on my side. But for us, if we have the cash on our side, we're spending it because we're so backlogged, right? So again, it's
Well,
just,
we don't have to spend it. We could choose to spend it, but we don't have to spend.
you
it.
can move it into the general,
Choose to stock it into the general
right,
fund.
to the general fund.
Either
Absolutely.
savers or good spenders, or find that sweet spot in the middle.
Correct. You're absolutely correct, Commissioner Kennedy. But again, I'm just talking from my standpoint,
I understand what you're
and
saying.
it's not my money. There's a lot that we have to do. And so I don't want to ever, because, I wanted to spend every last penny that I had in the budget when I knew there was, you know what? Right now, I think we can do a little bit of savings here. We don't need to spend it that much right now. And I'd rather be ultra conservative, and that could be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. And I recognize that. But I'd rather give you all the opportunity to be like, hey, Mario, we appreciate it, but let's move some of this a little bit more along. So for me, if it was purely my decision, I would try to move as much service and projects as we can while at the same time lowering it, so that when the rainy day does come, I have a little bit more of that cushion that I can push things and not have to cut as much as I would need if I'm already at the top.
Let me respond to something there. Each individual tax year is its own thing. So if we increase or decrease this year, doesn't impact in the future years. Just because if we increased it to 9.7, if we had already agreed to increase it to 9.9, the fact that we can't increase it beyond the limit is still the same for that year. It doesn't impact that. We're still getting the same.
But you're committing.
Each year is its own.
You're absolutely right, but
understand that.
but there's certain costs that you're committing to beyond just this year. And so that is why, like you said, you got to try to find those sweet spots between service and projects. It's why in the spreadsheets, for me, it's easier to be able to give you a kind of like a traffic signal, a green, yellow, red. Green, if you want to cut it, it's not going to affect service. Yellow, we could really use this, but if you're going to cut it, okay. Red, this could affect service.
Yeah.
Right. And so I try to use those visualizations, because that's how, when I was learning the process and I was trying to do this and all I had was a number compared to a number, it was like, yeah, but how important is that number? And so that little color chart for me, when I'm doing my own cuts, it's like, yeah, this I don't need, this I don't need, this I don't need. And I think to Commissioner Gonzalez's point, wages, insurance, benefits, those are hard costs that we don't really have control over, and those continue to go up. So next year, which I don't believe, if anything, I would say maybe 24, 25, 26 is when we might be like, property values flattened, might be a better word instead of decrease, because I don't know that they will necessarily decrease. I think it's kind of like gas. They never fully decrease, they just flat. That might be where it's like, okay, wait a minute, we're going to have to find some cut somewhere, but those expenses of those other positions, we might not be able to cut as much as we would want to. That's just why I try to be ultra conservative, thinking, okay, how do we spend this year, but how do I make sure I'm not being overly ambitious so that it's not impacting future years, and then it ties the commission and the community's hands on what they can do in future years.
The other thing we can't control is our income, our revenue. We have no control over that. It's controlled by outside forces, and we know what it is, and then we deal with it. Unfortunately, we're not a
Absolutely
company.
correct.
Like, I'm in the business of selling beauty products, and I can go tell my reps, we need to sell more shampoo this month and bring more money into the company. We can't do that. So that number is a fixed number for us, and we have to figure out how to live with that number. But the other way to look at it, and I'm not suggesting anything by saying this, but we have to look at all angles on this, is while everything's on the increase, if we stay at 9.7 instead of dropping down to 9.5, that's some extra money in our hand to get things done while we can. If we're afraid it's going to flatten out, or to determine we're going to set this aside to put in the reserves because we're concerned that our emergency reserve is not enough. That this year, Mario, based on this, the page you had up a minute ago, we're going to be at 86% and you'd like us to be at 100%. Well, that one right there, that's 80%, 86%. So we could say, okay, knowing that the average increase for a homesteaded property in the village, and that's not the same for everybody, but the average is $23 a year. So if we go from 9.5 to 9.6, the average person is going to pay $23 more in taxes to Biscayne Park that year. That's it. Less than $2 a month. Hell, you can't even buy. To us,
Point one is 29,422.
yeah. So it's almost $30,000, which is not, I mean, it's just so crazy. We're sitting like it's $30,000, like it's some big amount of money. It's nothing. But, you know, in our little budget, it is something. And it does enable us to get a project done. Or if we chose to, it would enable us to say, we're going to spend it on a project that has to get done, or we're going to put it in our savings account, or we're going to find that sweet spot in the middle. So I appreciate that you brought a 9.5 budget to us, because we'd all like to get as much done as we possibly can and keep the tax rate as low as we possibly could. But, you know, you have to find the balance in there. But just keep in mind, as we go through this process, if we decided to go to 9.6, the average person is going to pay less than $2 a month more. I'll pay more than that because my property is higher than the average value and I'm homesteaded, but it's really not a huge amount of money to any single person. And Mario, it's great that you put that breakdown of where the tax revenue goes, because people need to understand that.
Yeah.
They see the tax bill and they think, oh my God, look what I pay to live in Biscayne Park. It's like, well, look what you pay to live in Miami. This, you know, and look what you pay to educate kids in Miami is what it, you know, a lot of it is. So we need to have that conversation. I'm glad you brought 9.5 to us, but I think we need to all be open to having a conversation about how else could this look for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Moving into the building fund, we just got a couple more slides and we can go back into any other direction, but I don't want to end and not go through. So building fund this year is a little different. We have done quite a bit of work, which I think is amazing, and we're getting back up to speed and starting to meet a lot of state statutes that we weren't. So kudos to us. OpenGov, for example, is a big project that we had, and it's underway. More and more people are using it. There's little things here and there that we're tweaking, but for the most part, it's been a positive experience. You'll see that we need to, however, do an interfund transfer from general fund as of right now of 42,917 into the building fund. We have expenditures of 191,917. What's the biggest issue? What's happening here? We put the RFP for building and planning services out to the public, and we got one response. The current, now, until the cone of silence comes up, I can't speak with the company. Their initial response is asking for 90% of the permit revenues to go for them. So they're looking for a 90% while the village would receive 10. That is not going to be enough to cover all of our expenses. And we'll be using everything we can. So we don't have a lot of options here. Our current incumbent, I did ask them to see if they'd be willing to do some kind of extension. They are not. They are starting to allocate their staff elsewhere, and they do not wish to continue. They're going to see if we need to extend it for a month or two, they're willing to work with us in that end, but not for another year. Part of the problem, outside of, I have to go back and negotiate this revenue split down, but part of the problem are the fees. Our permit fees, the last update was in 2016. It's not reflective of what the world is today and what the cost is. The building fund should be operating basically at a zero. So The commission earlier did not have enough information to really want to move any of the permit fees. So I will be doing the best that I can to reduce the revenue split on the negotiations once the cone of silence is lifted, which it should be within the next week or two. But I think the commission will have to come back and have a discussion with regards to either continue, and it's okay if that's what we want to do, have the general fund supplement the building, or also increasing the permit fees to be able to cover the cost. So that's why we see that transfer in from building.
I'm not, excuse me, I'm not willing to give up 90%. I'm
I'm
not,
sorry?
said I'm not willing to give up 90%, just not.
I completely,
Is other cities do that? To give up that much? I mean, that's a big
some
chunk.
cities pay 100% because they run the entire thing. But we got one proposal and the incumbent's not willing to stay for a full year. So we're not going to have a lot of options, sir. So I will negotiate it down and I'll come back to the commission on August 16th with what we're able to reduce. But right now, the one proposal, that's the 90-10 split is what they proposed. Sure.
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. A couple of questions for you. So first of all, we already talked about the cost of living for the building employee was not correct on there. So that's going to be corrected for the next.
I have to look into it. I was speaking to Sharon. There is something already built in, but I think the number is not reflected in there. So I just need to go back and take a look.
Something's going to be adjusted in there.
But I think it's slightly off based on because the fiscal year 22 budget is not her full salary. So there's already that buffer in there.
Okay.
So I just got to narrow down to make sure it's the full 6% of what the actual salary is, but there is a portion. It's not going to be,
Understood.
it's not going to be an additional 10 or 11% that has to be changed or anything.
Here's my big question, and this is probably this may be me not understanding something, but I hope Paul is still there. Why do we budget our revenue in the building fund so low?
Because it's just a quick estimate. You never know how many permits or anything you're actually going to do or have. And so we could just match the number that we had last year, but that number is just more theoretical than
So
anything.
you're being conservative, and I appreciate that. You need to be in this department because you can't let it be upside down. But it's so far off. So for this year, Paul, if I'm reading this correctly, when I add up all the permits on the revenue side of the building fund, we're trending to bring in about $244,000, but we're only budgeting for about 105 for next year. So we're bringing in so much in all these different permit fees, if I'm reading this correctly. And it's because of all the activity in the village, right? It's all these houses, new construction, it's people buying houses and renovating them. There's a lot been going on for the past 2 years. And I'm not an expert on this, but I don't see that changing dramatically. But we're bringing in revenue that's more than twice what we're budgeting. And then we're taking money out of the general fund to supplement it to make the department whole. So could we be less conservative about that, Paul?
No. So before Paul answers, I'll just add the caveat, even if you increase the revenue because of the percentage split of what we're anticipating for the vendor who will be servicing the building department, you're still going to be upside down between the expenses that we have for the department and the salary and the benefits and everything, plus the revenue split. You're still going to be upside down. So we can match that number of 310. And when you start doing the expenses on that kind of revenue split on their end, you're still going to be short no matter what number you use.
But it gets you closer in the right direction. It wouldn't be the 310 because that's everything in the whole department, but it would be a chunk of it. Could be, it could be $20,000 or more.
But your
split of that.
your revenue will equally proportionally on the expenditure start going up as well. So again, because it's so high,
You're kind of chasing your tail.
you're chasing your tail on that. And the permits are based on projects.
Right.
So we don't know, even though there's a ton of renovation and stuff like that, we might not be getting the $20,000 project anymore. Now it's, I'm just going to change the floor. So it's a, you know,
Right, and
a
that's
2,000.
That's why you be conservative, because you.
That's
don't
why
know
we try to be as
that
conservative
it's
as
about to get
possible.
Worse if the split changes.
Yes, sir.
If I'm understanding, okay, Juliana, and if I pronounced the name wrong, I apologize. Accounting firm. Didn't have to explain to us by us not raising the fees, the percentages will be higher, correct? I mean, they don't have to explain. And if that's the case, then we as a commissioner screwed up.
Sure. So when we did the extension with Calvin Giordano, part of it was that the commission would take a vote. And if they raised the fees, it would be a 70-30 split. And if they didn't, it would be a 75-25. The commission never took a vote. So we tabled it, so it stayed at a 65-35. And so regardless, with the new RFP and the new bidder, only one person, one company, and there's only like 2 or 3 in South Florida that does this work. So it's not like there was 20 that would have done it. They gave their fee split, which is required in you know, what would it cost? And they gave what they said it would cost. Our incumbent decided not to bid because they, even at the 75, they were willing to do, but to me, what they had communicated is we're still losing money. And it makes sense when the cost, a building official, internal, and you can look and you can see cities that are paying for a building official internally, they're making over $120,000 to $150,000 easy. And so those people, yeah, they're working on the private side, but the private side still has to pay those market rates. So if they, on their clients, are not making their money, eventually they say this is too much of a loss, or it's not within our margin, we're just going to have to go. Going electronic finds a lot of efficiencies for them, so it can narrow that gap for them quite a bit. But at the end of the day, our incumbent just said they don't want to be here anymore.
They told us that what they were proposing, they still would be upside down on us.
Mhm. Yeah. So
I think this is what's going to happen, and as Commissioner Gonzalez, I think this is going to happen, the same thing that's going to happen with the garbage disposal company that we have. Sooner or later, they're going to do the same thing if they're the only bid. I just can't give up
Sooner or later,
90,
they're gonna
I
what?
can't give up 90% of what revenue, because we're basically, and I'm hoping I can explain this right. We're basically raising the residents' fees and all of that to give to another company, to give to somebody else, and we're only
yeah,
going to get
because
10% of that.
because we can't hire people internally to do it ourselves. You're going to have to I don't see any way for Biscayne Park to hire the plan reviewers and the inspectors and the building official internally. Unless you're willing to increase the permit fees 1,000% or more, I just don't see it being feasible. So you're always going to give that money away to a contractor to do those services. The other option is we can just,
When you're a municipality of our size.
right, we can always just eliminate permits altogether.
Do municipalities who do this in-house, do they ever farm their department out to other communities as a revenue stream?
Not that I've ever heard of, no.
Companies do. Organizations do things like that when they're really good at something and they can.
Normally cities work, they're never flush with employees where they have people sitting around. And so they're always looking to have just enough to cover everything, adding on additional. Biscayne Park at one point had Miami Shores do their recycling because they had their own thing. it became to a point where Miami Shore says, absolutely not. This is not profitable for us. We're not making money off of this. It makes no sense for us to carry on this type of liability for us to do. So I can definitely call the county and some of the larger communities, maybe North Miami,
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud here.
to see if that's something that they would look into, but I wouldn't put too much stock into that.
Just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna bring this back to us.
Well, this is part of the August
Well, I mean,
16th,
this-
you'll have an award, a recommendation for award. And once that's on the agenda, I'll be having a conversation with the bidder, that since the cone of silence is over, and see if we can, the RFP does allow us to negotiate the terms of the agreement. So, I'll hopefully be able to lower that where, maybe we won't need an interfund transfer, or it's at least cut in half or more. Okay.
Thank you, City Manager, what you're doing. I'm not criticizing you in any way.
No, I
I
completely
just
understand.
can't
It's-
see giving up 90%.
I can completely understand, Vice Mayor. Believe me, I'm not too thrilled with it either, but we are all up here in a position where hard decisions have to be made, and how are we going to make up that difference? And I think it's going to be a combination of two things. It's one, negotiating the terms of the agreement. And number two, we're going to have to come back to this table and see of what raising those fees are. I mean, what we proposed was never going to be at a level that would kill any project, right? There's certain, turning some things into square footage, but it would have been, even if it's a couple $100 on a $30,000 project, is not going to kill a project. So, but it does help fund. And a lot of times I even have difficulty, I think I was telling my wife where she wanted our 15-year anniversary is coming up, and like, hey, can we get away for the weekend? So we started looking, I was like, I'm not going to pay $700 for a night at a hotel just for us to celebrate her. Then I was like, there's no way, but that's what the market rate is. So it's like, we got to also realize that we don't live in 2016 numbers or 2020 numbers or 1990 or 1980. Things are drastically different. And today, unfortunately, in 2022, the economic status of the county, the state, the country, there's a higher premium because of what happened 2 years ago. And we're still feeling that backlog, and it's going to clear up and things will stabilize. But we still have to pay for those things in today's dollar value. It's why when talking about capital projects and storm drains, which is CITT, which will be ready for the next one. It's a little bit more of a complicated, and I wasn't able to get it ready for this one, but for CITT, one of the ideas is, well, if we can pave one street at a time, then at least we're doing something. You're absolutely right. But to pave one street is not a $20,000 line item. It's several hundred thousands of dollars. $20,000 might get you half a block of one street. The area on 11th Avenue between 119th and 121 for paving alone, you're talking about $100 and something to $200,000. That's not including adding the storm drain on the bottom. That's just what it is. And I think since last year, the analogy I say is, the cost of milk for Biscayne Park is the same as it is for the city of Miami. The difference is it hurts me a lot more to buy that gallon of milk than it will the city of Miami. Because the city of Miami has a multi-billion-dollar budget, or the county has multi-billion-dollar budgets. We don't. So we're still paving the same price for the same type of services, but for them, it's less impact than it is for us. So it's like Commissioner Kennedy says, we have to constantly be looking at everything to find what those sweet spots are. And then lastly, for road funds.
Stop telling
Sure.
on what you just said. So you're aware that a number of years ago, it was not long after I moved here, that the village tried to annex some more property over here into Biscayne Park, and it would have provided us with different zone.
Yes.
Commercial.
And the county shot it down.
The county shut it down. It is not a conversation for today, but maybe that's something we need to be thinking about again, is what does that do for us? I was very new here. I wasn't looking at the numbers of anything very closely then.
Right.
But there were some people that felt very strongly that that would have helped us out a lot. So it might be something we need to look at again and see if
So,
it really would benefit us.
Um,
Because I know the county's trying to get rid of these little pieces of extra unincorporated all over the place.
although it's not as easy as just saying they're getting rid. So on the other side of the canal, Biscayne Gardens, I think it's what it's called.
No, that's up there, but it's this little piece right here. I know what you mean. It's
Right.
unincorporated.
It's unincorporated. They just went through an annexation to create their own little village. And the majority of the voters turned that down. At one point, one of their residents called us to see if we would be interested in annexing them. And if not, could they hire our police force to patrol them? I was like, no, the county won't allow that. The county has jurisdiction over that. You got to talk to your county commissioner to increase patrol within the county department. We can't do that. Annexation could help, but the more, especially single family homes that you incorporate, yes, the revenue will go up, but so do the expenses. Because now you need more police, more public works, more other services. So it's not like you're making a profit
That's why I
of,
said we got to look at the numbers.
where you would probably look at annexation would probably be right off of 6th Avenue, that commercial strip all the way up to the Miami Shores border.
School.
Country Day School, although if they're a non-for-profit, you're not really going to get taxes out of that. Yeah, but it's the strip.
Not the church.
But you're looking for the strip. And so that might be an area where then you say, okay, we don't want high density within the village, but on that strip, we'll allow mixed use and let them go 12
Zone it
stories.
differently here. Call
So
it.
zone it differently where you can have retail on the bottom and you can have, 4, 6, 12 stories high. And then that is where you start seeing a lot more revenue come in, where your expenses won't overshadow that revenue, because when you have large apartment buildings, essentially, you have more density, more units, you're taxing more units, but you don't need all of these services that you need with personnel just to cover that type of unit.
Even solid waste is handled differently because
Completely
you get
different.
a commercial contract
Exactly.
with
It's
our
completely
vendor or
different.
someone else's. But this section over here, I think, is also zoned. It's not all single family. I think a lot of it is single family home, but I don't think it's all zoned single family.
Or for us or the unincorporated. So on the other side, right, on the other side, you have both.
It's mixed and there's retail in there.
There's a little bit of everything, but that
We
area,
have to be careful. Didn't that last thing cost us about $50,000 that we lost?
you put in quite a bit of money.
And we also had this discussion that, about annexation. I think I was on the commission. We had this discussion about that. And it was that we're going to have to eat the first 4, the voters that live in that area are not going to support annexation. They're not. And then,
They might,
their percentage is 7,000. We're almost going to have to get them up to code, is almost eat like 4 or 5 years.
it all kind of depends, Commissioner. There would have to be a full financial study that goes into it and all that. So you're absolutely right. We would have to put several tens of $1,000s, and it's going to be multiple years before that actually happens. But that's how you can increase the revenue and density.
Yeah, revenue.
Correct. And then finally, the road fund, it is short, but there's enough within the road fund balance to cover. So there's no transfers or anything. And the increase is because of the COLA and the FRS and the health insurance and stuff like that. And here you will see the balance that we'll have, and we're perfectly fine to be able to cover the road fund or anything like that.
Guys, I'm sorry, I have to leave. I have to go pick somebody at the airport.
I think we answered a lot of different questions for each of the departments. What I would ask before you leave, Commissioner Gonzalez, I emailed the commission the date to get me all of the type of changes that you all want. So make sure that we can meet in person and I can write those down for you. If you can email that to me as well, that is great. One of the other things that I'd like to ask is, and I understand that both Commissioner Hammelberg and Commissioner Kennedy mentioned to add the 6% for my salary, but in anticipation of the budget, I think I would prefer if we can do my my review in August, preferably August. When's the workshop? Is it the 4th? The 18th, I'm sorry, August 18th. We can have that before the workshop. Hopefully it won't be too long. And then we can go ahead and carry on similar to what we did today.
With this budget, we're not going to do all of the departments in one budget meeting. Didn't we bulk it up like?
Oh, we can, yeah. I mean, we just did basically all of the departments right now. So we would go through and you would give me all of the changes that you would want, and I'll put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and then we can talk about that, and it can cover. Last year, I think we spent an hour and a half, and we got through the entire budget, including CITT and everything.
Ari, I have a quick question for you. And I asked David to stay, and I may have missed this because a lot went on here tonight. Drain cleaning, where is that paid out of the budget?
That goes out of, thank you for reminding me, that comes out of the CITT funds that we do. And David, just to clarify, the drain didn't fail. It was just at capacity, and the water underneath wasn't allowing it to percolate because it was too much. So it did work. And then by the next day, that kind of emptied out. You're absolutely right. The street did fail. So it was still under warranty. That contractor came back and they made the necessary repairs for it. But the drain itself functioned the way it's supposed to. It's just a lot more. And I know you did ask, hey, if we design something for the 25-year rainstorms, what does that mean? There's a significant cost in that, not only on the design side, but on the construction side. So right now, our plans for the current stormwater that they're under design phase right now I think they're calling for 18 or 24. You would be looking for like a 36 or higher size diameter type pipes to be able to accommodate for that, especially because we don't have any storm pumps or anything like that.
Water's not going
So
anywhere.
if we're talking about a $1.1 million project that we've got now, talking with Albert and looking at what the market is, you can expect an additional 25% minimum on top of that. So that starts kind of pushing things beyond what we can actually do. But yeah, it's paid through CITT.
And then how often are you scheduling them to get cleaned? Is it on a regular schedule Albert's doing it, or is it he's checking them out and saying that one needs to be cleaned, or how is that being?
So in fact, like for the brand new ones that we did, you don't necessarily need to have them for a year, every year, because there's no buildup within the storm drain, right? What you definitely have to do is make sure that the grates on the top are cleaned off. And because we don't have commercial type usage, you're not going to get the type of trash that would end up in these drains, especially because we don't have curbs, and those curbs have really big holes, so everything and anything gets in there. So for example, when the vac truck went in to check on that drain on 9th Avenue, they immediately hit concrete. There was nothing there.
I thought they
So-
filled up with sludge. That was what was backing them up in the bottom.
Over multiple years, yes, especially when there's basically no structure. What was on 9th Avenue before was a very small pipe that was deep, but it was a very small pipe. So that does start getting in. But what we're installing is a 3x6 structure to begin with, and then pipe underneath. So we're actually okay with that there.
What does I don't know if it's a manufacturer or the contractor, what do they recommend do they require any kind of a maintenance to maintain the warranty? Or what do they recommend for cleaning?
The older a structure gets, the more often you're gonna have to do maintenance on it. Okay, because you start having multiple years of buildup and stuff, and that's where you got to start worrying about that. Within nine months or whatever from installation, you're fine. You don't have to worry about that. when you start getting into systems that are now 5, 10, 15 years old, yes, a yearly, you want something yearly, not necessarily just to clean out, but to do that inspection to make sure that there's no issue with the structure. The problem is in Biscayne Park, our storm drains, quote unquote, are not storm drains. They're holes in the ground that have a crate on top. That's what it is. So you can't clean them because it's all dirt. There's no concrete. It's just dirt.
So to answer the question, who's determining how often they do need to get cleaned?
We try to have some type of budget of about $15,000 a year. That's not going to address everything that we have throughout the village. So we're trying to just prioritize that so that we can focus on areas that are going to be reconstructed. We're not going to send that out there to do any cleaning because they're going to get, taken away now in the next couple of months. So we're looking to do that throughout and hopefully before the hurricane season.
Excuse me. One more commissioner has to leave and we'd like to get into public
Sure.
comments. So
There's no public comment.
Public comment?
we're not going to do public comments?
No, we had all the public comment before. Thank you, sir. Okay. So just so that everybody's aware, our next budget meeting will be August 18th, where we'll have various updates. We'll have board requests. We'll have commission requests for changes. We'll talk about those, come down more to a consensus. The first budget hearing will be on September 6th, where we'll do a first reading, and then the second reading will be September 26th. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. And I
I'll accept
look
the
forward to
motion
working with you.
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn,
Make
Jenny?
a second it.
Seconded.
It's a
All in
workshop,
favor,
so we didn't
say
really need
aye.
a motion, but thank you, everybody. Bye.
We did it anyway.